Hello, this is Deborah Kitko, Genealogy Library at the Wayne County Public Library, coming back with you with another segment on researching your genealogy roots. Today we're going to talk a little bit about vital records. And when I'm talking about vital records, I'm referring to births, deaths, marriages, and divorces. But I'm also going to include a little bit of a brief discussion about obituaries also. As you recall from some of the previous sessions, when you first get started, you want to start with yourself and you work your way backward. You work with the known to the unknown. And one of the other early steps of the whole process is to try to contact relatives to try to help you fill in some of the missing information. One of the ways that you can you may not even know about some of these cousins that maybe will help you with some of your research. So one of the options would be to try to find some obituaries. Obituaries would be a terrific source to try to find out who the survivors of an individual may be. For example, with my great-great-grandfather, Orson Reed, we have an obituary for him. And he was actually a Civil War soldier. And his, the highlight of his was, it says Civil War veteran next to last in the county. Taken. And within this one, it actually indicates that he was 98 years old at the time of his death. He was probably the oldest resident of Washington County, Ohio, that's down in Marietta area, southeastern Ohio. It gives that Mr. Reed was the son of the late Robert and Mary Barnes Reed. It shows that he was born June 23rd, 1840 in Chester County, Pennsylvania. It goes on and talks about his Civil War time period. It also indicates that he is survived by 8 of his 10 sons and daughters. His wife died August 17, 1931, so you're getting how many children he had, how many are still living, how many are deceased. You know that he is a widow, so his wife preceded him in death, and you have her death date as well. And it mentions the names of the kids as Robert Reed of Dart, George Reed of Marietta, Richard Reed of Marietta, John Reed of New Cumberland, West Virginia, Clinton Reed of Elba, Frank Reed of Marietta, Mrs. David Hendershot of Marietta, Mrs. Mary Frances of Whipple. And there are 46 grandchildren, 74 great-grandchildren, and 20 great-great-grandchildren. Thomas Perkins of Coshocton is a foster son who was reared in a Reed home. So you get a lot of good information just within this document. Now this is, you have the names of the individuals at the time of the death. He died in 1930, trying to remember. 1938, I believe it is. Yes, September 10th, 1938 is when he died. So you have the names of the individuals, the place of residence. You even have the married names of the daughters, David Hendershot and Mary Frances. So you have a lot of good information within this document right here. So this is just, I enjoy trying to collect obituaries because that does give a terrific resource for you to find out who some of the children may have been and who had actually survived individuals. Now, with this information, you can go on to Reference USA, which is a database we have here at the library, which has some white pages. So you can possibly, this one died since 1938, so you may want to follow through on some of these kids that you have and find out when they died and get their obituaries and then find out who their children may have been, where they're living, and eventually up to the modern era, you can use the Reference USA database to actually try to pinpoint where these people may be residing. So that'd be one way you can reach out and try to connect with some cousins, some that you may not even know existed. Of course, the other way is to compile genealogies. A lot of times you can find individuals who have submitted stuff online, and through them you can get names of relatives who you may be able to contact to help out with trying to fill in some of the information. And of course, the most recent trend is with DNA. If you do a DNA test, a lot of times they come up with some matches with some other cousins. And we'll talk about DNA at a separate session, but that'd be another way you can reach out and try to meet some cousins you may have not already known. When you're talking about vital records, specifically with births, deaths, and marriages, you want to make sure you do your research in advance because depending on which area you're actually researching, it's going to depend on what records may be available. For example, here in Ohio, births and deaths were recorded starting about 1867, and they're recorded at probate court. Marriages started at the formation of the county. So Wayne County was officially established in 1812. So any marriage that would have taken place after 1812 here in Wayne County should be recorded. If you had someone residing in Wayne County before 1812, then you'd have to, maybe they reside in 1810, you're going to have to go to either Stark County or Columbiana County because we were attached to them beforehand for our judicial purposes or for recording of official documents. In December 1908, it was state mandated that births and deaths would be recorded, and the problem with that is that with the early years, between 1867 and 1908, a lot of times the births and deaths may have been recorded like twice a year. So, for example, with the deaths for Wayne County in particular, if you had someone who died sometime after June of 1908 to December 1908, chances are there's not going to be a death record for that individual, only because they did not record them consistently. Then in December 1908, whenever the state health department was actually created, at that point you're going to get a little more information. Those early marriage records, for example, for Wayne County, do not include the parents' names until about 1899. Now, this may differ from county to county in Ohio. The death certificates or death records are not going to include parents' names unless it's an infant death until after December 1908. Birth records, of course, are going to include the parents' names, but sometimes you may or may not get the mom's maiden name for those. If you're looking, there was a first attempt here in Ohio to record vital records. There's legislation passed in 1855. So there are some counties that may actually have some earlier birth records and death records. You'd have to check with the county of interest within Ohio to see what may be available. Now, for Wayne County, we actually discovered several years ago someone came forward with the 1856-1857 vital records. And interesting enough, the death records recorded in those 2 years, as well as the marriage records, do actually include the parents' names. So I'll show you an example of that in just a minute. If you are actually trying to research in Pennsylvania, where a lot of the people from Ohio came from the Pennsylvania area, you're going to encounter a few more difficulties with vital records. For example, the counties did not record marriages until about 1885. So in Pennsylvania, you're going to have to go to church records to try to find some possible marriage records and baptisms and stuff like that. There may be some counties in Pennsylvania that started recording births and deaths about 1852 to 1854, then again in 1893. The statewide registration of births and deaths in Pennsylvania did not start until January 1906. And general compliance of the law did not actually start until 1915, so you have to deal with that as well. Also, there's some states that are what we consider open record and some are more closed. For example, in Ohio, anyone can actually go down to the health department and request a birth certificate or a death certificate. In Pennsylvania, you have public access to birth records that are only available 105 years and older. And for death records, the death had to occur at least 50 years ago before you can actually access those death records. Unless you're a direct ancestor or direct descendant of them, then at that point you can try to request those copies of that. If you, a lot of the ancestors came from Pennsylvania and Ohio, moved on out west into Indiana. So if you're doing research in Indiana, for example, births and deaths were first recorded at the county beginning in 1882. Statewide registration started in 1907 for births, and statewide registration for deaths started in 1900. However, general compliance didn't start until 1920. So this is just an example of a couple of different states that you have to do the research. And like I said, if you're doing research on Colorado, California, Wyoming, down in the Carolinas, you have to double check to see what information, when they may have actually recorded that information. Family Search Wiki is a great site to try to go onto, to try to find out when a lot of the records may have actually started. That's just one of many sites. A lot of times you may not have access to like the birth record or death record or marriage record, so you may actually have to try to use a substitute source. And some substitute sources may be, like a family history, a diary or journal, tax records, land deeds, private public acts of Congress, especially if you deal with military, territorial papers. And some of these would be, you can actually find access to a lot of these substitute sources either online or by actually contacting the county of interest and doing research in. But some of the most common subscription databases used that you can find some substitute records would be like an Ancestry, whether it's the library edition or the .com version, which you can access from home with a subscription. Heritage Quest, Full 3 has some on there, Find My Past. Newspapers.com, Genealogy Bank, those two focus a lot on obituaries. The Genealogy Bank also has some other vital records, so that may be a few other places. You can also contact government offices, whether it's the health department, the vital records, whatever that state actually calls it. Courts, probate court, for example, or orphans court over in Pennsylvania. You can contact archives of public libraries, academic libraries, etc. You can also use such websites as Find a Grave and Access Genealogy, which is accessgenealogy.com. You can find some information through the Genealogical and Historical Societies. Library of Congress may also include some information. So you basically just have to dig around and look to see what you can find. Once again, if you're doing research in vital records, do your homework in advance to know what is available. So, for example, if someone would contact our library for, a birth certificate for 1838, you're not going to find it because they don't exist. So you're going to have to use substitute sources. So at this point, do your research, try to find those obituaries, try to find some of those vital records. They do include some additional information. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact our library, or you can contact your local library or local genealogical society as well to help you with research in terms of genealogy. If you have not subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I'll have there's a lot of good information within that YouTube, whether it's genealogy related, whether it's how to do DIY type stuff. So you'll find a lot of good information through the Wayne County Public Library's YouTube station. So until next time, go ahead and happy hunting, trying to find those ancestors. Talk to you later. Bye.